Welcome to another episode of Maintenance Untangled, where we untangle the complexities of maintenance.
Like, a few seconds into it. Sorry, we'll go again. Welcome everyone to another episode of Maintenance Untangled, where we untangle the complexities of maintenance and have just a general conversation and a good chat. Welcome back to my co-host Ricky, back in person again.
Thanks,
Derick.
Derick.
Awesome.
It's awesome. It's always good to sit down and try and do this in person. We're still learning, a couple of technical difficulties along the way, as we always do, but, you know, we learn. We don't learn, we don't grow. So, yeah. And how have you been?
Good, very good. It's been nice and cool in the Barossa, which is good. Been busy, but yeah, slowly but surely getting there. How about you?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. Had a nice couple of days just relaxing and unwinding, and, you know, you got to take those days, especially when you run sort of your own business. You know, you got to take those down days when you can, and when you're flat out, just go hell for leather and just keep the momentum going.
100%. We're also welcoming back Roger. Previously have been on the podcast already. Roger, welcome. How are you?
Yeah, g'day fellas. How are you? Nice to be back. Thank you, Howard. Thanks for having me.
How was that corporate box in the AFL? I bet that would have been awesome.
Well, I'm about to go there. I'm actually there. I'm heading there on Friday night for the footy. So yeah, no, I am looking forward to that. It's a good way to enjoy the game.
Yeah, no, awesome. Gather round's really cool for SA as a whole. So proud South Aussies here, and awesome to see it take off. So
yeah, I think it's just great. The energy around the town and that sort of thing, and taking this to the footy to the country a little bit as well is really important. And I think the country people really embrace it as well. But it's I think it's quite popular, and I think SA have done a brilliant job of it as well.
Hopefully we keep it for a few more years.
Yeah, that would be great.
So, Roger, as you know, with this podcast, we like, first of all, to talk about safety before we jump into technical or knowledge transfer, I guess, is probably maybe a way to put it. I suppose throughout your time, and obviously within what you do nowadays, what's something that's safety-wise that stands out for you that you want to get a message across to our listeners?
Yeah, I suppose that I see a lot of value in setting up for success around safety and that sort of thing. And I think from a leadership point of view, where I spend a lot of my time working with leaders, and I get the opportunity to go out and observe how leaders go about setting up their jobs and their day. And something that I noticed between, I suppose, the guys that do it really good and the guys that are learning or still have a bit to improve on is the way that they structure up their pre-shift information meetings, whatever you call them, pre-starts or whatever. That's what I'm sort of familiar with. But setting up that meeting so that it contains really good information around what the tasks are for the day, what everyone's doing, what the potential hazards are, get some input from the team and really get some interaction going and get people thinking about what hazards they're likely to encounter for the day and what controls and that sort of thing they've got in place to combat that. Right through to feedback and recognition and that sort of thing. I think the leaders that bring the right energy and the right structure to those meetings send their people off to work in a lot better space set up for success. You know, so I think that the way your people leave your pre-start meeting is really important. If they're tuned in, whatever mindset they leave the pre-start meeting in is probably how they're going to conduct their first body of work. So I think as a leader, I think if you bear that in mind and work to that end to send your team to work with their mindset right, you're more likely to have, you know, some good success in that space.
And what's a good example of that, Rog?
Yeah, so I was recently working with a team that I was asked to go in by the management team and observe how their leaders went around about setting their team up for success. And I went into this pre-start meeting, and I suppose what I saw was an example of lots to improve on. The leader was sort of leaning up against the wall. It seemed like a real effort to be able to sort of talk about what the day is. They probably lacked a lot of detail around what sort of jobs and that they were going to encounter for the day and hazards. Didn't really sort of speak with any sort of confidence, and the room wasn't set up to, to a high standard. So I suppose everything about it lacked structure, lacked energy, lacked professionalism, I suppose. And I suppose they were then curious about why the team was going out and having sort of a really lackluster start, and the standards around the place were pretty low. So, over the following weeks, what we did is we set about putting some structure in place for their PSIs, which was about opening with safety and feedback, good recognition and that sort of thing for things that went on the previous shift, and then be very clear about what the jobs were that were on the table for the day and what hazards and controls were in place. So that was really taking on the safety space, but it talks a lot about performance as well. We introduced visual aids. So instead of just a leader just leaning up against the wall, we brought them out into the middle so they were front and centre, talked. You don't just walk out there straight away and talk with confidence. It's a work in progress, obviously, but you've got to start somewhere. And I think that providing a good structure, like a good pro forma document that they can work off, do some preparation up front, have some visual support, and then engage the team as well. It should not be a one-way conversation, your PSIs. It really should be a two-way conversation where you're sort of asking some questions of the team and getting their feedback on what went well, and also what they believe are going to be their challenges for the day. So over a period of probably 4 to 5 weeks, it changed from being very ordinary and unprofessional to very well organised professional leadership presentation. So, and all of that then, look, I mean, it hasn't been long enough to be able to really put some runs on the board as far as safety statistics and that sort of thing, but I can tell you what, I'll guarantee it won't be bad for their performance, that's for sure.
No, that's awesome here. And yeah, definitely. I've seen that myself as well. And it's obviously seen that transition where it changes the mentality within the team. So, yeah, no, that's awesome, Rog.
Yeah, no, I think Ricky, that by having a structure and following it and observing high standards at that meeting really sets your expectations about what what you expect to see from individuals out in the field as well. So I think I suppose it's leading by example, really.
I think Roger, that it's very important the energy you start your day with. It's very similar to why you should make your bed every morning.
Yep.
I'll preach to all the kids, because you start your day with a success, and it's exactly the same with your pre-start. It's very important to have a positive impact and a positive conversation, and clarity around what is your purpose for that day, or for at least the next, what's your next task to do, so that people have that clarity and don't go wandering out, because it also, although it relates to safety, it also relates to productivity, because then people are not walking out confused and looking at each other and say, what are we supposed to do? So it gives both clarity and purpose of what to do next. So very good point.
You can measure your success there, as far as when I had a group in the mining game. I used to deliver a pre-start meeting and that sort of thing, and then I would monitor the radio for calls and that sort of thing that you get within the first 30 minutes of your shift startup. And if you found that there was minimal calls, that people were pretty well organised and everything got running on time as per your plan, well, I think you'd give yourself a tick then. But if you didn't get it quite right, you'd get lots of calls, some confusion, perhaps equipment wasn't where it was supposed to be, and that's when you'd actually do some reflection and say, look, which bit didn't I get right? I need to be a bit better at that tomorrow.
And I think this flows into obviously what you're doing nowadays in your day-to-day role, Roger, and that's helping leaders become better leaders. I know that looking through your website, one thing that's really cool is you've got guides for new leaders on what are some of the key things to do. Do you want to talk us through what you do day to day? And then we can obviously evolve the conversation from there.
Yeah, so back in 2022, I got into something that I'm really passionate about, which was working with junior leaders. And I also started working with small, medium and larger businesses. But when I went out into those businesses, my first and initial intent to go there was for people that had a brilliant product or service, but they weren't brilliant at doing the business side of things. And as you know, that's really important. If you can have a brilliant product, but if you don't have the background and the foundation of the business, it can still struggle. And we see lots of, really good product or services that fall over because, they don't have a good business foundation. That's what I started with Undercover Mentor. But what I actually realised that when I went into those small and medium businesses is I think that we all know that the leaders are the prime movers for business success and quality. But when I was talking to a lot of these businesses, there wasn't a lot of avenues to develop their leaders. All that was really available was stuff that was really expensive, and it took their leaders out of their business for several days at a time. And as you know, when you've got a really small business or a medium business, taking your leaders out of the business is just not something that they can afford to do. So then I got busy thinking about, okay, I had a really steep learning curve. I went from a trainee dump truck operator to a mine manager in 5 years. And what that did was I ended up having to learn on the fly, under pressure a lot. But what I did do during that period of time was gather a lot of really good tools. So what I did was I spent a bit of time going, okay, if I was starting out as a leader, what sort of tools do I think would be really valuable to me? And I've actually put them all together into a leadership toolbox. And they do build upon each other. So they start at the start and work through. And the first sort of 10 tools within the toolbox are around about setting your leadership standard, how to make the tough conversations easy, how to delegate, how to give good task instruction. So those first 10 tools really build your foundation as a leader. The next 20 tools are all equally valuable, but they're more growth and development stuff that then really rounds you out as a good leader. And I suppose what I wanted to do, and as a leader through that period, I went to lots of training courses and that sort of thing. And what I found that I did was I really embraced it while I was there, but as soon as I got back on the job, I found that I just got caught up in the hustle and bustle of day-to-day operations. The folder went on the shelf, collected dust, and didn't actually see the light of day again. So when I went about developing the leadership toolbox, I sort of thought, I need to develop something that stays with the leader, forms part of something that they're already doing, so such as a folder that they carry with them, and they can keep it with them day to day. The leadership toolbox runs for 90 days. And part of that is about making sure that the implementation sticks. It's not just 2 days of full-on learning and then no implementation after that. But I think the thing that's been really popular with the leadership toolbox is on a weekly basis, I send out, when you sign up for the toolbox, you actually get the physical folder and the book of 30 tools and some pocket cards and all of that sort of stuff that goes with it. But the feedback that I'm getting is that where the value is coming from a lot of the new leaders is that on a weekly basis, I talk to one or two of the tools and I talk about the challenge that I was experiencing, how I either found the tool or I developed the process that become the tool, and then how it solved my problem and that sort of thing. And I even talk about the pushback that you get, because you don't just go and implement change and everyone says, this is brilliant, Roger, I'm glad you come up with this. Obviously, people don't always love change. So I talk about how I worked through implementing new processes and how I overcome that resistance to change, I suppose. And that sort of goes on every week for the whole 90 days. And that's where people are really connecting with, because they're going, oh, this isn't just something I'm experiencing. It's not just me. It seems like this is quite something that's just part of leadership. And it probably just reassures people that, it's a journey and, it's made up of lots and lots of education. So, yeah, so that's sort of where I'm at the moment anyway.
So it sounds like it's you also have a community of other leaders as part of like the call that you do on a weekly basis, whereabouts then you can also bounce through other ideas with people that you may not see on a day-to-day basis. Is that sort of about right, Rog?
Yeah, so the community piece isn't fully developed yet, Ricky, however, and that's mainly because a lot of the development work and the consulting work that I'm doing probably hasn't allowed me to invest to that level in time at this stage. So a lot of it is about sharing stories and that sort of thing. Not so much interactive with different teams, but it is something that I'm looking to evolve to. That's for sure, because that community thing is important. Yeah, that's right.
No.
This guy's been quiet all day.
So, Roger, you make a good point about understanding your as a young leader to establish a routine. Can you give us just high level, what are the typical routines for any young leader listening out there that that wants to try something new? What would you say? What's the first top 3 things that they should embrace or learn or establish?
Surely not go in with big sticks and this is who I am, this is what I'm going to do.
No, I think that's really important what you say though, Derick. But I see that people, I think in people's they get assigned or appointed to a leadership role, and one thing that they desperately don't want to be seen as the boss, but in their pursuit of not wanting to be seen as the boss, they actually miss their opportunity to be a leader. And I think that's really important. That I call it setting your leadership standards. So when you come in, I think most young leaders would have a bit of an idea on what they want their team to operate like. And if you don't, it's a really important body of work to actually do, to go out and say, what's important to me? What are my values? How do I want my team to work together? How do I want the operation to look? How do I want it to sound? How do I want it to feel? And obviously what generally people want it to be a really harmonious workplace. They want it to be a place of growth. They want to be viewed as a good leader. They want to actually deliver what's expected of them from their leaders, right? So I think the important part of setting your leadership standard is about being clear on what you want. And when you get appointed to that role, roll that out to your team. Share a bit about yourself. Talk about your journey, talk about your values, talk about what you expect from your team, talk about what you think good looks like, because a lot of people, when they have a new leader, they walk around on eggshells. They don't actually know what this person's expecting. They don't know how they're going to react. They don't know what's important to them. So why not just be upfront with them and share that? And generally, I would go through all of that stuff, and then I would seek feedback. Hey, what is it that you guys would expect from me as your leader? What are things that are important to you? And generally, when you finish off all of that, you package it all up. Look, is there anything there that you think is unrealistic or unachievable? Now, that's your opportunity for feedback. But what it also does is it presents what your expectations are. You're clear on what the team's after. You've effectively drawn the line in the sand to say, this is how I roll. And if I'm seeing this every day, I'm going to be happy. But if I don't see it, I'll probably pull you up on it as well in a respectful manner. So that's number one. I suppose from a number two point of view would be about, okay, once you've done that body of work, that's really important that you've set your leadership standard. And I see some leaders do that, but then I see them walk past substandard behaviours, things that they've said that are important to them here. Then they go out in the field and they walk past things that they said that they weren't going to tolerate, things that are important to them. And obviously what that does is it starts immediately eroding your foundation that you're trying to build. So I think the important thing is, once you've set your foundation, go out there and make sure that you don't walk past some substandard behaviour. In the toolbox, I talk about how to make the tough conversations easy. So it gives people a process, new leaders a process to be able to tackle those conversations where people aren't doing the right thing, but they're a win-win. You get a commitment from the employee to do the right thing, but through the process, you gain a lot of respect and that sort of thing as well, because you do it in a mature manner, I suppose. So they would be the first two things. And if you're after three things, the third thing I would say is around about learning how to package up a really good task instruction to make sure you get the job done right first time. So you guys would have seen it plenty of times. A leader will sometimes expect people will just think that they know what to do, whereas a really good task instruction will give people good context, set clear expectations about what the job should look like in the end, what the resources are, how much time they've got to do it, and then that's what you call setting your team up for success, giving them good information so that they can get the job done right first time. So look, that's first 3 out of the 30 that sit within the toolbox, but each one of them adds value at a different point, a different level. You know, there's one, the next one talks around about delegation, and delegation to people that can be a bit prickly about it. People that, when you're a young leader, that are, you're often delegating to people that are older and senior to you, more experienced and that sort of thing. And I'll sort of break down how I go about that as well. So there's a few things, and yeah, you best cut me off now, mate, because I get a bit passionate about this sort of stuff.
It's all good, Roger. If someone wants to find out more information, what's the best approach?
Yeah, so a couple of things there, Ricky. If they can just jump onto the website, www.undercovermentor.com.au, or I share 2 or 3 useful snippets of leadership information and development stuff on my social media, which is Instagram, LinkedIn, or Facebook. If they want to get a little bit of a feel for what my messaging and my my systems and processes are, that's a good way to get a little bit of a touch point and feel if it's something like they want to explore further.
Excellent. Ricky will put the links below that everybody can see it. He's the techie guy. Thank you, Roger, for your time. We really appreciate it. It was good chatting to you again. And we might grab you again somewhere in the future if you're available for another chat. That's okay. And he's frozen.
No, I think it's frozen outside.
Can you hear me, guys?
I've got full Wi-Fi. Yours is fallen over. Why is that?
Thanks everyone for listening. Little technical difficulty at the end of this episode, which is life. We'll get there in the end. Please like, subscribe, comments, reach out if you got anything specific you want us to talk about or learn from. Apart from that, have a good week and keep untangling maintenance.
And also, please follow Roger. Connect with him if you've got any questions for him. And if you've got any questions for us, give us a shout. Thank you, everyone. Talk to you again.